Hi there, my name is Adrian Martinez, and today I'm here to talk about how essentially individual methods of environmentalism, or saving the planet as we know it, are futile, and capitalism is what directly causes climate change. The only way to truly create such a positive impact on the environment is to, well, abolish capitalism. In this era of mass climate change, it is important to recognize that all methods of saving the environment should be considered, including ones that may seem radical at first. As a media arts major, I've studied how ideology is spread through mass communications, especially how US media is spread to preserve capitalist ideologies, and the various systems of society that they can impact, including how it impacts our understanding of the environmental crisis. US propaganda and corporate media intentionally lie about who's to blame for the environmental issues that we face, putting the blame and work on individuals to save the environment and shifting blame away from themselves. Thus, individual methods are, well, futile. One of the major causes of human-induced climate change is not pollution from individuals, but pollution from factories and destruction of wildlife, which is propelled through capitalism, and one of the biggest proprietors of this is the US. For example, the US military is one of the biggest industrial polluters in the world, consuming more liquid fuels and emitting more CO2s than most countries. The US military has one of the largest in the world in terms of funding. While the US military isn't the only major military polluter, when factored in with its funding, it is easy to see how one contributes into the other. As you can see, while we may be the third highest military in terms of population behind China and India, this is because of, well, population. But when looking at our funding, however, you can see that our funding far exceeds China. While obviously the US isn't the only major polluter, as I said earlier, for example, Morocco is not that far behind us, it is important to see that when this, in terms of funding and how little our military population is to see how one contributes into the other. Essentially, how capitalism, well, fuels imperialism. Not just through the military and the government, but also through big business, which includes harsh environmental impact around the world for American means. Deforestation in South Africa is a major issue right now, and a lot of the causes of deforestation in South America are, well, big businesses from the US. Another example is how historically we have traded trash, as in our litter, with China in exchange for economic reforms and letting us be able to trade with them. While China is another big creator of global pollution, this is largely due to sanctions, in that the trash exchange wasn't a fair game. Because think about it, if China wasn't going to take our trash, well then, America, which essentially brought the whole world against a communist nation, said that, hey, if you can't take our trash, something that we know is harmful to us and we don't want, then we're not going to open up our money to you, and we're not going to let the other countries open up their money and their doors to you. So obviously this wasn't a very fair trade. Because of this, capitalism feeds US big businesses and the government, which protects it to be the best in the world. But this notion has very deadly environmental effects. Climate change, as we know, is undeniable at this point. So as people start to wake up, those in power with the fear of capitalism potentially losing its grip have instead shifted the blame and put the solution on common people. This is done through advertising and propaganda. Propaganda is the definition of media that is created and funded by the state, which includes an ideology that fits within it. To shift the blame from them, the solution was instead put on common Americans as well as the blame. For example, a lot of ads and PSAs during the 70s at the height of the first wave of environmentalism largely portrayed litter, when that started to enter the public lexicon, were putting it on us. One of the biggest examples was, for example, the Crying Indian commercial, which was put out by a trash company, which said that essentially humans are the cause for litter. The reason individual methods are really honed on is because this is seen as what it fits into capitalism goal. Because capitalism says like, oh, what can I, the individual, do to myself and work on myself to better the environment, whether that be recycling, composting, or buying green. But unfortunately, the reality is that a lot of these efforts we put on ourselves can't keep up with the fast-acting damage that climate change has already done. Thus, it has also created a culture in which, especially those within the environmentalist movement, tend to look down upon people who are disadvantaged, whether that be because, well, largely because of income inequality, who can't afford the means to go green. And which, as a result, is individuals pitting other individuals against not fixing the problem. When in reality, those individuals, their efforts are very minimal in compared to combating climate change. Since these methods are, well, like I said, unattainable, because if you don't throw away that Starbucks plastic cup instead by a reusable one, how is that going to prevent the wildfires in California from happening and CO2 emissions going up? Thus, like I said, these corporations and government, which is tied to it, is a real culprit. And so the only way to really create a major impact is, like I said, to abolish capitalism. And I say abolish capitalism instead of reform, because reform under capitalism creates loopholes and only temporary measures that have very little or rather temporary effects. The EPA can only do so much. Even the EPA itself says that the biggest deterrent from making the environment better is the head-to-head combat between policy and economics. And that's important how they say economics. Because economics, when we hear that, we tend to think, oh, okay, just money. But that removes who is controlling those economics. What are those economics? Well, capitalism. And that method of practice is what is causing the environment to go down. So thus, if these economics are removed, then we can create true change. But not just that, loopholes are galore. Even then, in the 70s, at the height of the first wave of environmentalism compared to now, EPA regulations, especially with water pollution, because water pollution is a bit harder to track compared to air pollution, many companies have resorted, or rare factories have resorted to how can they make waste, how do I say it, water soluble or able to be put into water, which doesn't exactly work and can have a pretty bad effect on our wildlife. And thus, this may sound, like I said, very radical, if not this whole thing, abolish capitalism after all. In order to think our way about it, we have to rethink our understanding of how we think about money and our place in the world as a country. Since we create much pollution and environmental damage in other countries, like I said, deforestation in South America is just one of many examples. We must think not just about ourselves, but the world. It should be something that we should owe to the millions of people that are already displaced or killed or are in poverty due to climate change. Because think about it, at what point does human life have that matches $1? As you can see, various systems of power in the U.S. tie government and business, which is fueled by capitalism, which destroys the environment, and they blame us for the mess and expect us to clean it up. But our efforts on ourselves are marginal in comparison due to the rate of fast climate change. Despite what our government tells us, the only way to create real impact is to change ourselves, not as our daily routines, but through economics. As capitalism fuels human-induced climate change, and those in power must be held responsible. We only have one Earth, and at this rate of negative change, something immediate and, well, frankly, radical must happen. Like I said, is having the world's highest GDP really worth the killing of the planet?